There is one episode of Bewitched that people are still arguing about.
Tabitha, are you really trying?
I think so.
There is nothing funny about this.
It aired on Christmas Eve, 1970. It put blackface on a family sitcom in order to attack racism. It won one of the rarest honors in American television, and it was not written by anybody who worked on the show.
I discovered something about myself. I found out I'm a racist.
The names on that story credit belong to 26 teenagers from a high school in South Los Angeles, most of them reading years below grade level. How their script ended up on a top 10 network series is the strangest part, but it starts 2 years earlier, on the night ABC cut the feed. The interrupted broadcast. April 4th, 1968, Season 4, Episode 28. The title was I Confess, and the premise is almost too on the nose. Darren has had enough of hiding. He tells Samantha they should just tell everyone that his wife is a witch, that the secret is not worth what it costs to keep. Samantha does not argue with him. She gives him a dream instead, and lets him watch what happens when the truth comes out. The neighbors turn, reporters show up, government men show up after the reporters. The people who smiled at the Stevens house stop smiling. That is what was on screen on the East Coast when ABC cut the feed. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis at 6 Central Time. The bulletin went out. The network dropped the rest of the evening and stayed with the news for hours. Millions of people never saw how that episode ended. And here is where it gets confusing, because the confusion has never stopped. Look that episode up today and you will find people saying it was pulled, banned, censored, yanked off the air over its content. None of that is true. The episode was not the problem. History was. But the story stuck, and it has quietly done the show a favor, because it has kept everybody staring at the wrong episode for 50 years. The episode that actually split people did not air in 1968. It aired on Christmas Eve, 2.5 years later, and it did not come out of a writer's room at all. The teacher's idea. Back to Saunders. She teaches 10th grade English. Her students are almost entirely black. The school serves a neighborhood the rest of the city had spent a decade quietly writing off, and the numbers in her room are brutal. By the accounting of the time, roughly 44% of the students there were reading at about a 3rd grade level. Very few read much above it. So picture the desk, a poetry textbook open on it that her class cannot get through. A room of teenagers who are not stupid, not lazy, and not interested in pretending otherwise. She has tried the book. The book is losing. Basically, she stops fighting the book. She asks them what they actually watch, what they talk about at home, what they already know by heart. They know Bewitched, which is absurd on paper. A blonde witch in a spotless suburban kitchen. A husband in advertising who spends every week panicking about his boss coming to dinner. Nothing in that world looks anything like Jefferson High, but it is the show her class can recite, and when she pushes them on why, one of them says it out loud. The whole thing is about a marriage nobody thinks should exist. That is the engine. Samantha is one thing, Darren is another, and every laugh in 8 seasons comes from the people around them insisting it cannot possibly work. Nobody taught her students that reading. They got there on their own because they recognized it. So Saunders does something that had no business going anywhere. She writes to the production. The set visit. Letters like that get opened, admired, and filed away by the 100. That is what should have happened here. Instead, Elizabeth Montgomery reads it. Put yourself in that moment. The most famous woman on network television, holding a letter from a first-year teacher she has never heard of, about a school she has never been to. Her husband, William Asher, directs the series and effectively runs it. He reads it too. They do not send back a signed photograph and a form letter. They invite the entire class onto the soundstage. So the students walk onto the Stevens house set, that living room, the one they had only ever seen through a television screen. now with the fourth wall gone and lights hanging over it. They meet the cast, and by every account, they were not shy about it. This is not polite field trip, small talk. They are asking what the show is actually saying underneath the special effects. And somewhere in there, a field trip turns into an assignment. Saunders sends them home with a task that is frankly absurd for a 10th grade English room. Write an episode, not a fan letter, an episode. 26 of them write it together. If you are getting something out of this one, take a second and subscribe. We go after the stories behind classic television that never made it into the official version, and there is a lot more of this coming. Sisters at Heart. It airs on ABC on December 24th, 1970. Season 7, Episode 13. 213th episode of the series overall. The title is Sisters at Heart. The story credit reads, in perpetuity, 5th period English, room 309, Thomas Jefferson High School, Los Angeles, California, with all 26 students named. Barbara Avedon and William Asher turn their story into a shooting script. Asher directs it himself. The plot is simple. That is exactly why it lands. Tabitha makes a new friend, Lisa Wilson, the daughter of one of Darren's colleagues at McMahon and Tate. The two girls decide they are sisters. Then a boy at the park tells them they cannot be sisters because they do not have the same skin color. Tabitha is 6 years old and a witch, so she solves it the way a 6-year-old witch would. She casts a spell that covers both girls in polka dots. If the problem is that their skin does not match, fine, she will make it match. Think about what that gag is actually doing. It is a child looking at the rule an adult world handed her, deciding the rule is stupid and deleting it. No speech, no lesson. She just takes the difference away, because to her, it was never the point. Underneath that is the adult half of the story, and it is a lot sharper. A client named Mr. Brockway comes to believe that Darren is married to a black woman, Lisa's mother. He decides on the spot that he wants Darren off his account. No debate, no softening. He just says it on a network sitcom at Christmas in 1970. Samantha does not argue with him either. She casts a spell so that Brockway sees every single person, including his own reflection in the mirror, as black. The Wilson family was played by working black actors, which on a top 10 sitcom in 1970 was not a small thing. Don Marshall and Janie Michelle played Lisa's parents. Vanetta Rogers played Lisa. Parley Bear took Brockway, and ABC put the whole thing in the Christmas slot. Think about that scheduling decision for a second. The one night of the year when the entire family is parked in front of the set together in every region of the country, including the regions where this was going to be a problem, and the network knew exactly which ones those were. Why it divided. That last spell is the reason people are still arguing about this episode, but here's the catch. To make its point, it puts white actors in dark makeup on screen, blackface. The single most poisonous image in the history of American entertainment, used here to carry an anti-racist argument inside a Christmas comedy from a story written by black teenagers. There is no version of that which lands cleanly for everybody. There never was, and there is not now. The defense is simple enough. The intent is flipped. The makeup is not there to mock anyone. It is there to trap a bigot inside the thing he despises and force him to look at it from the wrong side. And the students chose that ending themselves. It is their argument, not a studio's. The criticism is just as simple. A device does not shed its history because you aim it somewhere better. Point a loaded thing in a kinder direction and it is still the loaded thing. And the ending is very tidy. One spell, one mirror, one changed man, roll the credits. Racism presented as a problem a 30-minute comedy can solve before dinner. Both of those are true at once. You do not get to pick one. Most controversial episodes are controversial because somebody made a bad call. This one is controversial because there was no clean call available. Everybody involved knew it, and they shot it anyway. Now put it on a calendar. All in the Family, the show everybody credits with dragging race in America into primetime comedy, premieres about a month after Sisters at Heart aired. Bewitched got there first. So why has almost nobody heard of it? The Governor's Award. Part of the answer is that a fantasy sitcom about a witch does not get taken seriously as social commentary. Not then, not now. Part of it is that the episode sits in season 7, deep into the stretch where most casual viewers had already drifted off. But it is not that the industry ignored it. At the following year's Emmys, the 23rd Primetime Emmy Awards, the episode received the Governor's Award. That is not a category anybody campaigns for. It gets handed out at the board's discretion for work considered extraordinary enough to sit outside the normal competition entirely. Get this. It went to Marcella Saunders, a high school English teacher, barely into her 20s, no professional credits of any kind, accepting an honor that had existed since 1961 and had never once gone to a non-professional. And there is a detail in the closing credits worth stopping on. All 26 student names had to be listed, which meant a number of the craft people who normally appear in those credits got left off that week. The crew gave up their card so the kids could have theirs. Then ABC did the thing networks almost never do with an episode that generates complaints. They ran it again the following December, same holiday slot, not edited, not buried. A full year after everybody had had time to complain about it, they put it right back in front of the same audience. So who inside that show wanted it out there that badly? Montgomery's favorite. Elizabeth Montgomery introduced the episode on air herself and closed it the same way, describing it as a story conceived in the image of innocence and filled with truth. Out of 254 episodes across 8 seasons, she named this one her favorite of the entire series. Erin Murphy played Tabitha. She was 6 years old when they shot it, and she has been saying the same thing for decades. It is the one she brings up, not the big magic episodes, not the guest stars, not the nose. The one about 2 little girls and the polka dots, which tells you something about the room. The star of a top 10 show and the child actress in it both landed on the same half hour out of 8 years, and it is the half hour neither of them wrote. Murphy has also described what Montgomery was actually like off camera, and it is not what the network was selling. Not a goody two-shoes at all. Filthy sense of humor. Zero vanity about looking ridiculous. The same instinct Lucille Ball had for going all the way into a bit and not caring how she came out of it looking. That is the woman who read a letter from a first-year teacher in South Los Angeles and said yes, but go and watch the episode now, and something in it is off. Most people never register it. The missing Darren. The Darren standing in Sisters at Heart is not the Darren most people grew up with. The best half hour the series ever made is being carried by the replacement. By 1970, Dick York was gone. York had wrecked his back before Bewitched even existed, filming a Gary Cooper picture called They Came to Cordura. A stunt with a railroad handcar tore the muscles down the right side of his back. Doctors did what doctors did in 1959. They prescribed painkillers and kept prescribing them. By the middle of the series, he was working in constant pain and, by widely reported accounts, dependent on the medication. Scenes got built around it. He was shot sitting, leaning, propped against furniture, holding on to things. Then, during season 5, he went down on the set, crew standing around him, cameras ready. The version that has circulated for decades is that a doctor gave him a vitamin injection during a lunch break, and he had a violent reaction and seized. Whatever the precise trigger was, they took him to hospital, and he never came back. The show ran several episodes with no Darren in them at all before Dick Sargent stepped in. Audiences never forgave it. Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora and genuinely liked York, did not want him replaced, and reportedly clashed with Sargent over it. What came out of that friction, oddly, was one of the closest friendships on the lot. Montgomery stood by Sargent through all of it, and the two of them stayed friends for the rest of their lives. That detail matters more than it looks like it should, and here is why. The other confession. Sisters at Heart ends with a man forced to see the thing he had spent his life refusing to look at. 20 years later, one of the two men who played Darren stopped waiting to be seen. October 11th, 1991, National Coming Out Day. Dick Sargent sits down on a Geraldo Rivera television event, on camera, in front of an audience, and says publicly that he is gay. He knew what it was likely to cost and said so afterward. He expected to lose a lot of work. He expected never to be cast as a father figure again. He raised the possibility that he might have to sell his house, and he said living openly as himself was worth every bit of it, that he liked himself more than he had for most of his life. The following year, Elizabeth Montgomery walked the Los Angeles Pride parade route as co-grand marshal. On the street, next to him, now set that against the series the two of them made. 8 seasons about a woman who has to hide what she is, married to a man who spends every episode insisting the secret has to hold. An episode called I Confess, where the confession plays as a nightmare. An episode called Sisters at Heart, whose whole plot turns on a spell that makes a man see. Sargent died of cancer in 1994. Montgomery died the following year. She was 62, though several obituaries printed 57, because she had spent a whole career politely declining to give anyone her age. Some listed her as unmarried. She had married Robert Foxworth and never made it public. Even her death certificate carried the wrong middle name. She kept her secrets right to the end. It is very hard not to see the show in that. What remains? Bewitched ended in 1972, and not because of any of this. It ended because Elizabeth Montgomery was finished with it. ABC had renewed the series for a 9th and a 10th season. She wanted out. By the account of Herbie J. Pilato, who wrote a biography of her, that really was the whole of it. Her marriage to William Asher was coming apart at the same time. The couple divorced the following year. It has been in syndication somewhere on Earth ever since. Whole generations found it through late-night reruns, where it sits alongside 253 other episodes, with no idea that the most talked about half hour in the run started life as homework. The students in room 309 were not television professionals and never became any. They wrote 1 episode. It won the industry's rarest discretionary honor. It aired twice on a major network in prime time. And it is the one the star named as her favorite out of 8 years of work. That is the part nobody tells you. No band tape. No network cover-up. No scandal at all. Just a 23-year-old teacher who could not get her class through a poetry unit. And 2 people at the very top of a hit series who answered a letter they had every reason in the world to ignore. If this was worth your time, subscribe. There are a lot of these stories, and almost none of them get told properly. And tell me what you think down in the comments. Sisters at Heart used a device most people today would refuse to put on screen in order to say something almost no show in 1970 was willing to say at all. Did those students get it right, or did that ending hand everybody an easy way out?